Hi, Rhema. It's week 43, day 4 of our Bible narrative reading plan. Today we are in Mark chapter 11, starting in verse 12. We've seen the triumphal entry, and now on the following day, when they're coming from Bethany, where Mary and Martha and Lazarus live, just a couple of miles from Jerusalem, they're on their way and they're hungry, and so Jesus sees a fig tree, and he sees the tree. It should be blooming, but it's not, and so he curses the fig tree. He says, "May no one ever eat from you again." That might seem like Jesus is just being grumpy. Maybe he's a bit hangry. But no, there's a point for this. You may miss it at first because Mark does a device in the way he tells the story that we commonly call a Mark sandwich. He starts with the bun, he tells the first part of the story, he interrupts himself with the meat, and then he comes back to the bottom part, the bun, in a moment. And so we have the cursing of the fig tree, but then Jesus cleanses the temple. And you might think, well, okay, I think I understand the temple, but what's this got to do with the fig tree? And so after that, verse 20, you go back to the fig tree. Again, a Mark sandwich. And you put all of it together to see the significance. What is Mark teaching us? Jesus is properly, rightly angry about what the temple has become. It's the place that's supposed to be bearing fruit, and it's not. And so Jesus cleanses the temple. He curses the temple. In the same way, he's not doing a verbal parable with the fig tree. He's doing a living parable, a living lesson. He uses the fig tree as an analogy. He curses the fig tree because it's just like the temple. The temple ought to have been bearing fruit, but it wasn't. And so he cleansed it, he cursed it. In the same way, this fig tree ought to have been bearing fruit, but it wasn't, and so he cursed it in order to teach his disciples this lesson about what the temple should have been and how it has failed. But as we go on, we see that Jesus' authority continues to be challenged, and Jesus answers questions with a question. And the people can't answer these questions, and they eventually get tired of asking him questions because they fail so miserably at it. But Jesus does answer them in a way they don't like. He answers them again with a parable. Chapter 12, verses 1 through 11 are an important parable. It's using a lot of Old Testament language to help them see the way that Israel has rejected its prophets. Again, it's failed to bear the fruit that it should have borne. It's failed to recognize how God was working in their midst. And we see that in the parable, the vineyard owner sends his beloved son, and they reject even him. We understand, as New Testament Christians looking at this, Jesus is telling them all they've done, all of Israel's history wrapped up in one parable. And the people understand, because in verse 12, they were seeking to arrest him, but they feared the people, for they perceived that he had told the parable against them. So they left him and went away. They understand that he's condemning them. Yes, he's entered Jerusalem with a triumphal entry, but he's condemning them. He's cleansing the temple. He's saying, you should have been bearing fruit. You have rejected all the prophets, and you're rejecting me, and I'm claiming to be the Son of God. That's what he's telling them, and they clearly understand, and they're afraid of the people. Here's a summary of today's reading. For more information, go to tunemyheart.org.